Hey guys, welcome back to Just Fixing Garage. I'm Justin. Today we're working on a 2002 Volkswagen Beetle with the 1.8 turbo. It's a manual transmission. I'm doing a couple things today. I'll probably do brakes and rotors. I think we're doing a secondary air pump and looking for a leak there. But in this video, we're going to be working on the alternator. It actually was replaced by a shop previously, but it was just tested again and it's failing, so likely just a bad part. Unfortunate. It's going to get a free part swap out, but you know, we got to do the labor again. So I'm going to dive in, show you step by step how I'm going to change your alternator in this 2002 Beetle with the 1.8. Hopefully this will help you save some money. So if you need some help, follow along. Let's get started. All right guys, you've seen me do alternators before. Alternators, starters, you know, all this fun stuff. And the one thing you always do with these types of systems and most other work is you want to get your battery disconnected. So I don't know what factory this might look like, if there's more to this box, but for ours it just hinges up. And we see our negative terminal is on this side. That's probably going to be an 8 or 10 millimeter. We're going to loosen that and drop that to the side. We're probably going to loosen the positive as well, just to get that off. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to make sure that there's no power going to my alternator so I don't start a fire. And then we'll dive into the next steps. So please do this first, step one. All right? All right guys, so you saw me take it off. I'm gonna get this positive more out of the way, or it was out of the way. The negative's off anyways, it doesn't matter. They were two 10 millimeter nuts that you'll loosen. So just get your positive out of the way, get your ground out of the way, make sure that's good. Then next is gonna be just removing this cover here, which should pop right off, theoretically. There we go. Looks like it has a little bit of a hinge part. So now that our plastic is off, let's take a look at our beautiful, already newish alternator down there that's gonna have to come out. The best way to do this is going to be getting your throttle body out first. It looks like it's gonna be using some Allan keys, so I'll check what size that is. We'll get this out of the way, and I'll follow up afterwards. All right guys, so far, I didn't hit the record button, but I've taken off my clamp here with a flathead screwdriver. That clamp is to get the intake boot off of here. Makes it easier to get to some of these Allan keys. It's a 5 millimeter Allan key. It looks like 4 5 millimeter Allan keys that I'm gonna have to take off. There's also some wire going to the throttle body, which I'll look at in a moment. But first I'm gonna loosen up all my 5 millimeter Allan keys off of here and see where that gets me. All right guys, quick recap of what I've done so far. I took the 4 bolts out of here. They're 5 millimeter Allan keys. I undid my clamp here. Next is gonna be, well, this is kind of free here. I can actually pull it up and we can see our little wire harness here. Just gonna push down here and hopefully just pull. I don't think there's anything, so that's proprietary there. Okay, you wanna hold that for 1 second? I gotta see.
Sure.
If the screen goes out, that's okay. I don't know what holds this specifically on. Might be one of those, just a really, it's a really hard push, that's all. Really hard push. That little nub. All right, so throttle body's out. Now that that's out, we're gonna need to relieve our tensioner. I'll get that figured out in just a second and show you what we're gonna do. Then we'll be removing the tensioner and there's a few other things, but throttle body first. So let's get to it.
Okay.
Hey guys, so you've seen me do a bunch of tensioners in the past. Usually it's like a bolt or something along the lines of like using the head from your socket. This one's a little different. So I have an adjustable wrench on here and there's a little, almost like a tooth that you're gonna grab onto. And you're gonna grab onto it and you're gonna just pull it towards the front of the car and you can see it's actually relieving the tension on everything. There is a method, and I'll have Brad hold the camera, where you can probably put a pin in here to keep this tension relieved. I'm gonna try to do it with like a head of an Allan key. If not, I'll just pull the belt off and do it the old-fashioned way, but I'm gonna try to do that way. But you know, next step is getting the belt off, so you're gonna need to put something on there, like an adjustable wrench, and pull it. It's very easy compared to some cars. So Brad, hold that for just a second. Mr. Cameraman. Let's see if we can do it this way. I think that's just gonna bounce up, but maybe not. Okay, yeah, that worked. It's probably gonna pop, but all right. So there's a little hole there. I put the Allen key through. It might hold it. You gotta get a big enough size, but right now the tension is relieved and it's locking it that way. So should make it where I can pop off my belt. Theoretically. There we go, yeah. All right. So belt is off the alternator. We're gonna move on to the next step, which I actually think involves taking off the tensioner anyway. So let me take a look and then I'll follow up with you. Hey guys, hopefully the video is not too choppy. You just saw me take off the belt and the tensioner. Sorry, you told me to take the, relieve the pressure on the tensioner, put a pin in it to hold it. So you can see the Allen key hanging out there, get the belt off. Next is gonna be, is removing the actual tensioner. There is 3 bolts there. There's 1, 2, and 3. They're all accessible. They are a 13 millimeter. I believe it's all 3. I'm gonna double check as I start loosening it. But we're gonna need to take the tensioner off itself. The tensioner is kind of in the way. We're gonna remove that, and then we'll see about removing the alternator. So hopefully you can see those 3 bolts. It's kind of, kind of difficult. But if you see the tensioner, you'll see the bolts, and we'll start working that out.
I gotta stay in contact with this one. Never know, he'll line something else up. Yeah,
all right guys, so I got the tensioner out. As I had mentioned, it is these 3 bolts. It sits down in there like so with 1, 2, 3 bolts. And that is awesome to get out of our way because now, let me set this down, we can see our alternator even better. And right now I only see 2 bolts. I'm gonna feel for a third. Unfortunately with this case, I didn't do the first job, so I don't know how many bolts it is. And I don't have the new alternator here. He actually has to take the alternator with him to the store for them to give him the other one. So I don't know how many bolts are in there, so I have to feel around. I'm thinking it's 2, but if not, I'll let you know as I get in there. But I think the next step I'm gonna do is either looking at the wires here to see what can come off. I see like a pinch wire, pinch style clamp that can come off, and if I can get to the nut, I'm probably going to do that too because for me I like to do the wires first. I don't like to get them all tangled up, and then I'll look at the bolts. So I'm gonna look at this myself and then I'm going to follow up and show you how I did everything. All right guys, so there is 2 wires over here we're gonna have to work on. One is underneath of this plastic cap, plastic, rubber, whatever it is. You're gonna have to kind of pry that off to get in there. I'm still working on it myself. There we go, and I dropped it on the ground, but it hit the ground. There's that one, which is just a nut, which hopefully is fully tightened. It doesn't look right, but we'll see. It'd be funny if it was just loose or something, but I'll know in a second. I'm gonna get that off. And then there's your plug right here, which you should be able to pinch. I actually already kind of broke it loose, but you're gonna push down on this part right here and then be able to pop it off. So let's get that out of the way. Do not do this part unless you have already taken your battery off. I mentioned in the beginning, if you let this terminal touch anywhere on here, it'll probably light the fuse link, which is a fuse in the wire, and hopefully not catch fire. But if you make a mistake, you're easily going to burn this car to the ground. So I'm gonna take a look at this now. Kevin, I think it's gonna be a 13 millimeter. You got the 13?
For what?
For this nut right here. And of course in the instructions, I'm gonna try to list all the sizes so you guys know what it is. I guess I can do it from the top. Let's see. Is it a 13? I guess that's my question. I don't know. It could be some weird thing, when you get remanufactured ones, they'll swap it out for different sizes. Oh, 13 it is. So take that, let's see if we can get a better angle there. Take that one nut off so we can get that wire off. After that's done, it's as simple as unbolting and pulling it out. So I'm gonna do that. I'll keep videoing, you can see it. And then I'm gonna start unbolting the alternator. All right guys, So I got my electronic connection disconnected, 13mm nut on there. Oop, that almost died. And then unplugged my terminal there. Now right now I only see 2 bolts that I need to take out. We got one there and one at the bottom. They're both 13mm. I'm hoping that's it. I'm gonna loosen them up and see if this alternator will pop out through this hole right here. And of course I'll film it so you'll see, and then I'm gonna follow up afterwards. And then I'll probably, if it's out, I'm gonna ship Brad out to go get a replacement alternator. And then I'm gonna do brakes and rotors, but I probably won't film that for you guys because nobody wants to see that. But all right, let's get to it. All right guys, so I got this alternator ready to come out. I thought I was gonna be able to pull it straight up to this opening, and because of some of these lines I'm hitting, that's not gonna happen that simple. It looks like I'm gonna have to lift up the fuel rail some to get to it. And from what I can tell, it looks like it's 1, maybe just 2. I'm gonna go through this rail here and look at all the bolts holding the fuel rail in, then I'm just gonna try to pop it up to get these lines out of my way. Hopefully that will get me going. So I'm gonna try that out. Let me make sure it is like a 5, same as the other thing. Seeing as how it's the, well, it's probably the same. Yeah, so I'm gonna go through, do all that, and then I'll move forward. If not, I'm gonna have to loosen this thing too. I see there's one more bolt I didn't take out. Almost looks stripped though. This has me a cause for concern. Or you're gonna have to go more that way, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, she's coming. Might be scratching the paint on the inside a little bit, but she's coming. Hold on. We're gonna need to take this off.
She's almost out of there.
Yeah, I just don't want to pull this plug. There we go.
There it is. Shit, there you go, buddy.
All right, guys, so all I did was take out 2 bolts here. I probably could have taken that 3rd bolt out and then lifted this up. You're gonna have to wiggle it back and forth. You're essentially pulling your injectors out of your intake. I'll probably give that a good clean in as well, but I think that's the only way we're really gonna get this out. Anyway, after doing that, I'm doing some pushing up like this. The alternator came out through here. So unfortunately, gotta be done, but not terrible. So he's gonna run to the store and grab another one. And once he gets back, we'll put the new one back in and we'll get all this buttoned back up and show you all the steps. So we'll be back. All right, we've got our new alternator. We're gonna get it fed in there. I wasn't able to get my bolt out because it's stripped, but I know we can get the other one back in because we got the old one out. So I'm gonna try to drop this thing in. Usually it comes out easier than it went in, right? Okay. Oh, I see the rubber hose. There we go. Ta-da! Probably can't even see, but it's in there. All right guys, the alternator is set in there. I'm gonna start by putting my 2 bolts in there to get it held in, and then I'll start doing my wiring. At this point, if the alternator is in, you could set these back in there. I'm gonna do that after I get the alternator secured, and then I'll show you how we kind of fiddle with this back in there. With these being the fuel injectors here, you wanna make sure they go in there straight because you don't want to like pinch an O-ring or something. So let me get these bolts started, and then we'll look at that. All right, so the alternator bolts are started. We're gonna take a look at our fuel rail here. We're gonna have to pull it up and get it lined back up into everything. All the fuel injectors need to line up at the same time. With me, like I said, my bolt is stripped and not coming out, so I've got to kind of pry to get everything where I want it, which is not a big deal. It's just that bracket, and then I'm able to slide everything down. You take this time to clean some of your O-rings and stuff. I'm not going to get too far into there, but Ken, if you want to hold this for me right here, I'm going to work through so they can at least see me for dangling with this thing. There we go. We get behind there. There we go.
This is the only reason I'm here.
Yeah, usually I put you to work.
Nah, no.
Usually.
There's a lot of tires that gotta come off the car, Kevin.
I know.
Okay. Everything feels like it's seating in there good. Let me get my bolts for that, which are Allen keys. Small little boys. Specifically, 5mm. See if I can get through there. I gotta do it in the video. Okay, so took me a little bit of time, but I've got this fuel rail bolted back in. There's two 5mm Allen keys, and then there's also that big one in the middle, which we didn't take out, which made us have to bend some stuff because it looks like someone's been here before and stripped it. And rather than me fight with it, we were able to work around it. We've got our alternator in. Kevin's tightening down the two 13mm for it now. He's already tightened down the... You didn't tighten that down yet?
Nope.
Okay, we've got it started anyway. The nut on there. Let me find my wire because we got to plug that in. Hopefully it's not trapped. No, it's right here. So we'll plug that back in. Again, our battery's still unplugged.
Thank God.
And that should lock. That locked on. So we're going to tighten that down, put our cap back on it, get our two 13mm tight, and then we're going to put our tensioner back on. So we'll keep working through. I guess the biggest thing is your fuel rail that I didn't define in the beginning. You have to remove or raise up. But again, take out the two 5s. Take out the larger, I think this is a 7 or an 8. If you can, you have to wiggle this back and forth because you have your fuel injector O-rings. Wiggle it back and forth and pull straight up. Give you enough clearance to get the alternator out over there. We actually only took the 2 out, but I suggest taking 3 out if you could, because this is just a bracket. It just didn't work out for us, but that's okay. So get our alternator tight, get that stud tight, cap it, and then we'll work on the tensioner.
Sure about.
Hey guys, I stopped recording for a second. I'll do another recap. It's what I keep doing with this when you're not watching anything. When I did take off my fuel rail, I did disconnect this. There was a metal clip in it. I'll put it back on at the end. Something else to notice is as you're tightening these bolts, you're gonna think it's really loose, but you're gonna keep tightening. It's actually gonna pull like part of a spacer out from inside the alternator itself, so this will actually get snug. You don't swap spacers over. It actually like kind of self-spacers itself. We've got everything back on here except the black cap, which I think we had dropped on the ground. Let me see. Yep, there we go. Which the new one didn't come with one, so we'll put our black cap back on. You said that's good, Kev? Yeah, it's good. It's good, Steve. It's real good. Okay, I don't think this is going to fit our size anymore because it's a different size nut. So it doesn't really stay on there. So no biggie. It's not required. But oh well. Sorry, Brad. Doesn't fit that nut.
Yeah. Well.
All right, so guys, this is in. Next part's our tensioner. Putting that back in. Remember, there's 3 bolts for that. When you do it, you want to make sure that your bracket for this hose goes over top of the tensioner. So I'm gonna get that set up, lined in, and bolted in. Then we got to work on our belt, which it's gonna be its own task, but we'll get there. So let's get to it. All right, guys, let's do a quick another recap. Belt is back on. I have not relieved the weight off of the tensioner yet. I did put this clip back in here that I took off. I don't think I showed you. I just did it. You know, you have to remove this metal and pull that off when I raise the fuel rail. I've got the 2 bolts back in the alternator. Everything is snug there. I'm about to relieve the tension on my belt. If your skid plate is out, you can reach a lot of the belt stuff from the bottom. I was able to do everything pretty easily from the top. So that's that. Next is going to be my throttle body after I relieve tension on the belt. I'll do that now. Both the throttle body back in. If you have a new gasket, great. If not, no big deal. There's my plug for the throttle body. I'll put my worm gear clamp back on, and then we should be good. So let me keep going. All right, guys, last follow-up before putting the battery back on the cover. I've got my clamp back on here. I got this plugged back in. My throttle body is on and plugged in. Everything here is good. I tightened my hose clamp back on here. The new alternator's in. My fuel rail is tight again and nice and seated in there, so we shouldn't have any leaks or issues. Last thing's gonna be hooking my battery back up, which you can see here. So I'm gonna get that done, and then we're gonna test start it. But that's essentially all you need to do for this job. So just to follow up on what we did to start with, disconnected the battery, removed our throttle body, which was 4 5mm Allen keys, got that out of the way. There's also a plug on it, and this hose, and then the worm gear, which you can probably use probably a 6 to 8mm on that, or a flathead. We took out 2 5mm Allen keys on this fuel rail, and there's also a larger Allen key there. Mine is stripped, so I can't tell you the size. If I had to guess, a 7 or an 8. But once you do that and you unclip this, you're going to pull this entirely off so you can loosen it. After the throttle body is off, the next thing we did was remove stuff on the tensioner, which, oh man, I think I left that on there. I'm going to have to go back in there. I forgot to take the tensioner off there, but I'll go in there and get that done. Funny, I told myself I relieve the tensioner, but I didn't relieve my tensioner yet, but I'll go in there and do it now. But anyway, you're going to remove the tensioner, the 3 bolts, 3 13mm bolts. After you relieve the tension on it, take that off, and then there's 2 13mm bolts on the alternator, and there is a nut on the back that might vary in size depending on if this is a factory or not, and then there's a plug right there. Doing so will allow you to pull the alternator up through here, so long as you've got the fuel rail up and out of your way. Put the new one in there and just reverse all the installations like you saw. Mount the alternator back in, then put the tensioner on, have everything tightened up here, relieve the tensioner, bolt your fuel rail back down, throttle body, and get that all tightened back in. So that's pretty much the whole job. Lastly, with tightening the battery back on, do not put the battery back on until you're fully done. So anyway, guys, I hope this was helpful. If it was, be sure to like, subscribe, and I appreciate all the help on the video and the love. So have a good one. See ya.